Hello, welcome to today's class. Glad you're all here right now. Many of you have turned in um, your video piece or your written piece about where you are. We already know we got a baker in the class. We have well-known regional journalist Brandon Solis in our class, and several other of you that are already kind of making your mark. People interning already. People uh, learning already what we're going uh, about real life, what we're talking about throughout this class. I'll tell you throughout. Do internships, do things that get you experience, especially in this industry because of what this industry is about. A lot of places you can go and get a degree and go to work in a new industry. You can in this one also, electronic media and different things, but you want to have experience. And again, a lot of that is based on what you can do for me, right? Because we're all inherently a little bit lazy and we go, hey, this person can really help me out. So today we're talking just a little bit about our industry. Then we're going to talk about management and how managers exist in our industry. Today will be a little bit a little bit of a beat down on some of these things, but let's talk right away about where we are as an industry. I mentioned that one of us works for the Dallas Morning News and their online edition blogs for the Dallas Morning News. Um, and I always like to use this example or this slide about you see the dinosaur based out of newspaper because the traditional newspaper, the way it is, we'll see why in just a minute, has gone away. And you have to be agile. You have to understand where we are as a manager, how we're going to account for changes in the industry. Who can really think about where we're going to be 10 years from now? I mean, eventually you feel like there's going to be an overload and we're going to get to a certain point where the world can't change that much. But we don't know that. We know that eventually you can't even probably fathom where we're going to be 10 years from now. And so you have to be agile enough, mobile enough. For your generation coming up, that's not necessarily maybe such a big thing. Think about a guy like me that nearing the end of my career, more on the other side of my career, that you go, gosh, how much more change can we have? And so you have to really adapt as you go along. The reason I have planes, trains, and newspapers is because the train industry went through that in the 40s and 50s when people primarily used trains to travel, and they weren't really prepared for change. And the change came in the form of a president who was in the military, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, and he saw the value of an interstate road system throughout the United States, and that changed the way a lot of people moved their goods, how a lot of people traveled, and then obviously as the development of the airplane and they became more and more accessible to people, and then trains had to kind of reinvent themselves, and it's a whole different industry now than it was back in the 50s. I worked in an industry for years, and I talked about it yesterday that I was president of the company that does electronic, well, does production for the classroom. So when I started, we were doing VHS. We're doing VHS, and there were still people in the industry who were doing film and slides. They had a hard time adapting to the new technology, which was VCRs. And at that time, we were looking at, okay, what's going to be the next big thing, and what's is it going to be discs? They had these digital discs at the time, or what was it going to be? And eventually, it started as CD-ROMs, then CD-ROM, and then DVD, and now that is all transferring and all going online. And so, again, if you're not agile, if you don't look for the way things change, you get left behind as a manager. Here's a great example, I think. So, uh, it's not John Paul, it's Benedict. So we've got a mistake there on the slide. The Pope Benedict, the 16th, I believe, in 2005, when he was inaugurated as the Pope. And if I went to Catholic school, so the Pope can immediately accept the reins when he is elected, or he can have an inauguration ceremony. And so here is Pope Benedict. We should change that. No, I won't change it now. Benedict. Well, we should change it so that when it'll be changed on your slide when you see it. See right here in the corner, if you look at my arrow, there's one person there with a flip phone that's shooting some video. Now remember, we just recently celebrated the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. So that was in 2007. So Pope Benedict was inaugurated in 2005. Now flip ahead 8 years later for Pope Francis. Look at the crowd. Could anyone there, maybe some people there in 2005, would have foreseen what was happening 8 years, 10 years down the road? Maybe not. Now look, everybody, you're an outsider if you don't have something. We deal with this in athletics all the time of our changing industry and how people consume media, how people want to be entertained at sporting events because everyone there has one of those in their hands. So typically, if we were in class, I would ask this question: what hurt newspapers the most? It wasn't necessarily the content. It was Craigslist. Craigslist took a giant bite out of newspapers' revenues between the years 2000 and 2007. Um, and since 2006, newspapers have lost more than 50% in advertising revenue. Um, and circulation remained fairly constant for a while, even after advertising started going away, as the newspapers are trying to figure out. And we'll learn later in the semester that people still like to consume the newspaper by the actual physical newspaper in their hands, but the advertising dollars, classified ads that now no one even thinks to look at the newspaper for a classified ad. Now they go online or they do different ways. Now you're looking at different applications, different sites on Facebook and other social media where you can move merchandise. And it used to be you had to do it in the newspaper. It used to be when you'd hire for a job, first thing you do is you call the newspaper and you take out a classified ad. And it was expensive, but you really didn't have any choice. And it's funny because the publisher of Craigslist, Craig Newmark, had really, for years, really looked. He'd really, I think he felt bad about what was happening in newspapers. He really would say he didn't really have anything to do with what was going on in the newspaper industry. But then recently there was a study by two business school professors who looked into it, and they did actually confirm that Craigslist took out $5 billion of advertising revenue, and that wasn't even looking at things like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or even USA Today, which had some advertising at the time. They took all those out of the sample, and so what they concluded was Craigslist had a huge effect on newspapers. And again, they were looking at a couple different things, and so what happened was newspapers. Remember the wolves video that we saw yesterday, which isn't necessarily true. We remember that. It's not true, all the things that happened, but the concept was in was true. You introduce wolves into society, it changed different things. Newspaper rates then began to lower as far as what they could charge for an ad. That's both classified and then display advertising, which would be a car dealership ad or whatever you would have. Subscription rates began to climb. They had to start charging more for subscriptions, trying to make up for the lost revenue. Disruption, in this case, Craigslist, online ways to advertise, caused disruption. All of a sudden, there were some things that people weren't looking at. People sitting around in boardrooms saying, hey, how do we make up this revenue? All because of this one particular website that changed things up. And then it led to others, and now you've got television stations acting as job searching sites and all that. It's just changed up the industry completely. Disruption led to where we are now. Another term that I always like to use for this: unintended consequences. So when one thing happens, it generally leads to another, and generally leads to another. And a lot of the things you weren't necessarily thinking about, sometimes we get unintended consequences. This poor guy here is thinking, I'm just going to knock that over, and doesn't realize eventually that whole thing is going to come crashing down on him. So you might say, well, it's easy. We'll just start a online website to sell product. Not necessarily. Again, by doing that, you're taking people, resources away from a different area as you concentrate on something. So something might pop up that you were not necessarily ready for. Unintended consequences. And so it's something we will see a lot throughout the semester. The thing we need to remember when we talk about electronic media, and we'll talk about some of their distribution channels in just a minute, we are a dual product market. There is content and there is audience. They are dual products and both have value. There's content that you can sell to consumers. So if you have a newspaper, you're selling the newspaper. If you have a cable channel, you're selling your channel to a consumer. There's a way for somebody to consume. If you're a television station, it might not necessarily be something for sale, but you're trying to get somebody to watch your product. If you have a website, you want people to subscribe, or again, eyeballs on there. There's content. The content has value. And then the audience you have has value to potential advertisers. So if you just have a fun little website that it's really cool and it's funny stuff and it's really great content uh, between you and 10 of your buddies, no one really wants to advertise on that because it doesn't make any sense. But if you have a certain audience, then all of a sudden you become valuable to somebody. So I started a website, Red Redder Sports, back in the early 2000s, and early on we didn't have much traction with advertisers. Well, now you have a, a group of subscribers where they pay money, $95 a year, $99 a year, whatever it would be, to get the content. And then you can turn around and you can go to a restaurant or a bar or a car dealership and say, hey, look, we have X number of thousand of subscribers that went to Texas Tech. They have disposable income because they're spending this kind of money on a site like this. Do you want to get in front of those people? And they do. And so you sell the audience. So it's a dual product market. Made initially came to fruition basically through ESPN. ESPN really kind of wrote the book, uh, especially in certain areas, on a dual product market. They had content that they charged for to the cable companies, and the cable companies and turned around and charged the consumer, and then on top of that, ESPN sold the advertising. On top of that, so they had dual streams of revenue coming in, dual product market. Remember that. We'll talk about that a lot throughout the semester. This is a little old. I think now ESPN is actually like $6.96 or almost close to $7 a subscriber. But it shows you the value. So let's say it's $7 or right here. It's $6. You can even do it $6. Then you got ESPN2 there at 75 4 cents. Now it's like 90 something cents. So when ESPN starts losing subscribers, uh, they lose. So they've lost, I believe, over the last couple of years, I think they've lost 12 million subscribers. So think about that a little bit. Wow, that's a lot. They still have 88 million subscribers, or 87.4 or something along those lines. But you think about the revenue lost. So 12 million subscribers at now $7 a subscriber. 12 times 7 is $84 million. You go, okay, that's a huge number. But ESPN can handle that. Well, think of 84 million a month. That's over 800 million, close to $900 million in revenue in a year. That's not even counting ESPN2 and the other stations. So they lose on two fronts because they lose the whatever the 80 something $1 million a month in subscriber revenue they had, but also they're not as valuable to advertisers. And advertisers are doing like the rest of us. They're reading the news and they're seeing that ESPN is losing subscribers based on cord cutting and other things, bundling different ways people can watch television now, and it's hurting the industry. So you have to look at that again. So as a manager, you go, okay, we've lost a lot of our subscribers. A, do we try to put the genie back in the bottle and we try to go get those subscribers? Or B, do we look for other ways to create revenue streams? And so that's going to be a challenge for ESPN. There's a lot of studies that tell you It looks bad for ESPN because clearly they are the most prominent cable channel, but just cable in general is losing subscribers, and ESPN is actually losing subscribers at a lower percentage than the overall industry is. But still, they are a good poster child, excuse me, for what's happening and the amount of money they can cost you. So now you're in this new media, and you have to decide. Again, this is a management class talking about how do you attribute for the money, the way the revenue is being distributed, the way the world is changing. What are we going to do as an industry? What are we going to do as a media company? And how are we going to combat these things? And you have to be able to juggle all those things in this brave new world we're living in. The book's got a great definition. Management is a process by which individuals work with and through other people to accomplish organizational objectives. That would be a test question right there. Look at that. I'll figure out a way to make that definition into a test question. So look at that. It's basically a process, right? You got a bunch of individuals either working directly for you or working, somewhat for you, and they work for somebody else's manager or your direct report is their boss, however that works, to accomplish the objectives of the organization. So the key there is the organizational objectives. If you know what your objectives are, you can pass it on to your employees and so on down the line. So take a look at that. Leave that up for just a second so you can look at it and get going. So electronic media obviously plays an important role in our society. First of all, it provides audiences with entertainment or information, news, movies, television shows that you want to watch, must see TV, all those things. Also influences culture and helps develop or define social reality. People kind of see what's going on in the world through media, whether it be what they're listening to on the radio, the news, what they're seeing, the way television shows operate. If you you think about that, if you just got dropped on this planet and you watched a certain television show, whatever that would be, that would kind of define what your reality of the society is. And the third thing is it clearly is an important component of the economic system, and it provides jobs, it provides lots of different revenue streams, and so media is very important in our economy. I used to do something about pop culture, and when I had it, first of all, there was a great picture of Miley Cyrus, who I actually think is a pretty good singer. I don't know what y'all think about that. Um, you can, if you listen, you can put that on the message board whether you agree with that about Miley. I think she may be kind of strange or whatever, but I think when you hear her sing, she's really got a good voice. But there was kind of a crazy picture of her with her tongue out and doing a selfie or whatever, and um, it helps to. I mean, that is part of our culture, right? People, young teenagers, see that and say, okay, this is the way I'm going to be, and so for better or worse, that's another part of electronic media. There's tremendous power in having all those eyeballs on you. Audiences have a lot of things to choose from. So you have to decide as a media manager how you respond and what you're going to do. So if you're a programmer, for example, and you know a show like The Walking Dead is really popular, it's a really popular cable show and maybe one of the most popular ever. Do you say, hey, that wave is going to ride out, or do we ride the wave, or we're going to create our own show in this genre? All those things you have to look at and decide. So the job's obviously a little bit challenging because you do want to provide information and entertainment for the audience, no matter what you have. If you're creating something, you want people to watch it or consume it at some point. You want to make a profit for yourself. I mean, we do everything we do, right? We want to be able to make a living at. Or if you're in a big publicly traded company, you have shareholders and you have owners and others, and you need to have something again for audiences, for advertisers to access. You have to have something that they can look at and they can say, yeah, I want to be a part of that. So you have a lot of different needs in the market. And again, we are a highly regulated industry. Technology is always changing. Go back to the picture of the two popes. Uh, Social issues, how you're going to cover different social issues in consumer taste. People are changing constantly of what they like. And there used to be you know, you've seen it, especially in network television. All of a sudden, 1 hour dramas became really the rage. And then for a time, it was situation comedies. And then you had some primetime game shows that really took off. And then you had reality shows. And again, people's tastes change. And so you have to account for that and say, hey, people aren't really watching reality shows anymore. We need to do something different. There are a couple of different areas that we look at: development, production, distribution, and exhibition. So development is adopting or creating new technology or changing technology. And there used to be everything was analog; it switched over to digital, and so people are in charge of that. Making new phones, developing the next wave of applications or phones. That's all part of development. Then there's actually the production of it, which is the hardware and the software that you have. You have the DVRs, the DVDs, satellite dishes, whatever. Distribution, you have to have a way to get it out to people. And again, sometimes you have on radio now, you have satellite radio, you still have traditional radio. We have somebody in our class who has a radio show. And then you have the actual exhibition where the consumer actually uses the product. Sitting down, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to listen to this radio show. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to look at this website. I'm going to uh, sit in front of my television at 8 o'clock on Sunday night and watch The Walking Dead. That's the exhibition of it. Those are the four type of activities for electronic media. Depending on the size, and a lot of these slides come from the book, and we'll see this throughout, and I'll make fun of it because I'll get tired of saying it a lot. A lot of these things will say it depends. It depends on the size. Generally, there's never just one manager. Now, that doesn't necessarily true. Like when I had a small business, um, I dealt with a lot of other small businesses where sometimes there's just one person there managing it. But you can see, especially in a larger organization, there's managers throughout. Here at Texas Tech, we have managers all over the place. I've got 48 people in my units. I have 5 direct reports who then manage the people throughout. So my managers manage. Sometimes their people under there manage, and so it's very fluid. Generally, you can look at it in 3 ways: lower level managers, who we've all discussed and seen; middle level managers; and then executive managers. And those are the people at the top of the food chain in any industry making decisions and creating and making sure the business is viable. But all 3 are very, very important. You have lower level, middle level, and executive. Lower level managers generally supervise others. They monitor individual performance. This is a little bit different because even really the top person, the CEO, probably does monitor individual performance of maybe certain managers, the president or something like that. But generally, lower level managers are doing a lot of that and supervising what time people are getting there and other things. Mid-level managers plan and allocate the resources. They manage the performance of the smaller groups, so they might not be as worried about the individual performance of 4 people, but they may be more interested in the overall performance of that group together. And then you have the executive managers who monitor the entire organization and looking for internal and external factors that might impact things down the road. Somebody sitting in a chair going, you know what? I understand Apple's working on a new product that might change the way that people use their phones. And all of a sudden, this fun little camera that I have on a flip phone is going to be irrelevant because Apple's going to change the game. What are we going to do? Usually there's somebody in an executive position that thinks strategically and looking at all those things. But regardless of the level of manager you are, all managers share certain skills, functions, and roles. Skills are the basic competencies needed by the managers. What are you skilled at? What are you good at? Are you a good people person? Are you good with numbers? Those are skills. Functions basically refer to the tasks that the managers perform. Uh, People always ask me when I'll have a student come in and talk to me, and they'll say, um, "Hey, what's your typical day like?" And I always tell them a lot of meetings. We have a lot of meetings. So functions refer to the things you do on a day-to-day basis, and then the different roles you play. And sometimes we'll go through this in a minute, but sometimes you might act in a different role for your business than you would typically on another day. So you have skills, you have functions, and you have roles. So just using me, and again, I'm in my role here at Texas Tech. So my skills would be the writing skills, management skills, marketing skills, those type of things. My functions would be, hey, I'm in charge of the day-to-day operations of these 4 or 5 units, and that roles might be, hey, I'm going to be a spokesperson today for Texas Tech. I'm going to lead the charge on a certain area. I'm going to serve on this. Well, we'll go through these here, and again, I apologize that this is kind of tedious. And as the days go on, uh, it gets better. There's very broad skills needed. So when we talk about the skills, some people are really good technically. Some people have really good human skills. Generally, those first two don't always go together. A lot of times, technical people um, aren't really good with the human side. Conceptual skills, being able to understand concepts and problem solve and those type of things. Financial skills, which is managing the money and understanding where money goes, how money works, and then the marketing skills. So I know that went by fast, but we're going through each one of these. And always also remember that each one of these PowerPoints will also be in a folder that you can check, throughout. You can use to get ready for a test. You can actually look at during a test. So technical skills, just mention that. Some people are really good programmers. Some people are really good at fixing things. And so I am very, very weak technically. I don't understand a lot. I know how to shoot and edit. I haven't done it in years. I don't understand. Hey, the cameras, uh, the shot looks dark or whatever. I don't have the technical skills. Human or people skills, which means having strong interpersonal skills and are adept at leading and motivating people. Already can see that a little bit just in the brief interactions I've had with some of you. Some of you can tell are really adept at people skills, and others don't like it as much. It's not right, wrong, good, bad, or different. Just things that you need to be aware of. Conceptual or problem solving skills, understanding the complexities of the internal and external environment, and then make decisions based on sound judgment. I used to have a business partner, and she was really superb at problem solving. She needed time to think about it. I'm more of a let's decide, let's decide, let's decide. She's more of a hey, I need to sleep on this. And generally, she would come back with a really good solution. She's really good conceptually. It's a great skill to have. Financial skills, being able to manage your budgets, meet your revenue projections, and deal with budgetary issues. And when we talk about finances, we'll talk about this too. That the mistake a lot of managers make is they're saying, you know what, I'm not really good at this. I'm going to let somebody else worry about it. It's something you got to get good at. Really, to be an effective manager, you have to be able to at least know what's going on financially. And then you've got the marketing skills, knowing how to position your products, know what vehicles to use to create awareness. Um, the book loves these things like 4Ps of marketing: price, product, promotion, and place. We'll actually talk about those when we do the marketing segment. Everyone's different. Again, you'll never work at a job. You won't get a job somewhere in marketing. Somebody will come to you and say, "Hey, what are the 4Ps of marketing?" You just need to know, "Hey, what's the price we're doing? What is our product? How are we going to promote it, and where are we going to promote it?" So there you go. So we go back: technical skills, human or people skills, conceptual problem solving skills, financial skills, marketing skills. 5 skills basically that anything somebody is really good at fits into uh, one of those areas, and it could be in really any industry. So think of a coach, right? You've got a coach like I office here in my office. Tom Stone, the soccer coach. He's a great recruiter. He's got great human and people skills. He draws up plays. He understands, hey, when we're behind, what we need to do. He's very good conceptually. He knows the different things he needs to do. And really, technically, too, he's really good because he knows, hey, they need to take this angle or that angle. He may not be as good financially in managing, and Tom's really good at marketing. Not all coaches are, but he understands all the things. So because he's a manager, and in his level, he's an executive because he's the head coach. So you can almost take this and look at any industry and apply it over to there. This isn't rocket science. We have a lot of studies about management functions. I'm not really big into the different functions as far as the scholarly things. So you've got the Sfeol study from 1949. We won't have those on the test. You can skip those, but you can look at some of the things about all of those studies led to where we are now, and that's the different functions of a manager. And you can break it down to planning, organizing, motivating, controlling, facilitating, communicating, and negotiating. So let's just start with the first one, planning, which means establishing the objectives. What are we here for? What are we trying to do? And really, you need to get your employees to share in the planning process, um, just so they buy in and they understand, and you understand what they're looking for, and they may think of things that you as a manager don't think of because they're on boots on the ground every day. But you have to be able to plan. You have to be able to look at a situation, know where it is, and know what your next step should be. So, thinking of a plan, there are 3 criteria for a plan. Writing this down because I'm going to base the test questions off this. Plan needs to be written, right? You don't just say, oh, it's in my head. I've got it all in my head. No, you need to have it somewhere. Written could be on your computer. It doesn't necessarily mean to be a printed out form, but it needs to be written. It should be quantified in some way. I plan on doing this. And quantified doesn't necessarily have to be a number. It just has to say something that is measurable. And you need to have a deadline. Because again, I'll give you a great example. We're working on a video now where I said I need a draft by next Tuesday. Deadline. So it's part of planning. Then you go to organizing, and that's basically saying who's responsible for doing what. Where are we? Motivate. Who's getting high level performance out of the employees? Studies have shown that employees want managers to recognize them for their individual achievements. And they want opportunities for growth and advancement. So you want to motivate people by saying, hey, you did a great job in this. And also, hey, here's what I see your future being. And you need to get on them sometime, but you need to be able to cajole them and other things. And part of motivation. Sometimes you've got to motivate your people. You have controlling, which is, again, giving feedback to employees. Controlling has a negative connotation. It's not necessarily a negative word here. Monitoring the progress towards the completion of organizational objectives, and sometimes making hard decisions, making changes as situations demand. It's not easy sometimes being a manager. You're not going to be everybody's friend. You're not going to generally manage by consensus. So you have to be able to decide what's right, what's wrong, and make the decision. Monitoring, also a control function. This includes, again, just keeping tabs on where you are. Again, you don't know if you're saying, hey, I want to produce 7 new videos by September 1st, and you're not monitoring, and you get to August 31st and you say, where am I in those videos? You might find out you're in trouble. Monitoring is just keeping tabs. Where are we? Every week, let me know. I sit down with my managers once a week and just monitor where we are on different things we have. And then facilitating includes empowering employees with the resources to complete tasks. So we need more people. We need more budget. We need new computers. We need new cameras. Again, in this industry, everybody always wants a new computer or a new camera or a new fancy something. And there's a lot of money that goes into it. But as a manager, you have to say, yeah, that's a want, that's a need. There's a big difference. You need that or do you want that? So parenting. Got a daughter going to college next fall, and you deal with that with her life. Do you really need that, or do you just want it? It's part of facilitating. And the last thing you have is just your functions. Communicating, letting people know what's going on. Newsletters, doing a memo that you email out to the group every week. Performance reviews. Hey, you're good at this. You're bad at this. You need to work on. Really, you really wouldn't say you're bad at this. Hey, you're really good here. Here's where you need improvement, and it's good. It's good for people. You need to communicate to see where you are. Um, I try to. It doesn't work necessarily because I have a lot of remote people. I have people at the arena. I have people at the ticket office. I have people here in the building. But I try to at least go by and see everybody if I can on a day-to-day basis. You have to negotiate. It might be, hey, you got to work on a contract. You're working on a salary for a person. I had an employee come in the other day and tell me that she had been offered another job and with a much higher salary. If it's close enough, I might be able to negotiate a little bit to keep her. If it's not anywhere in the ballpark, I say, hey, we'll have a great going away lunch for you. Part of the role. The role is negotiating. So the function. Then you have different roles you play. So let's go quickly about the functions. You got negotiating, you got communicating, you got monitoring, facilitating, controlling, organizing, and motivating. All things you may do on a day-to-day basis. But also, you serve different roles, and you expect certain things out of their roles. You expect a manager to be able to get up and talk in front of people. Again, here's another one of those studies. 3 types of roles managers take in their daily environment: interpersonal, informational, decisional. And here's another one. We're going to combine all these into this: a leader, a representative, and a liaison. Leader means you're going to lead, you're going to manage, you're going to make decisions, you're going to change the direction of what you're working on. Communicate with people. You're the leader. You're the manager. You're the leader of this unit. Again, I have 5 units that report to me. I'm expected to be the leader of all 5 of those units. Representative, basically, sometimes being a figurehead, serving on a community board. I speak. I'm going on July 27th. I'm going to Colorado Springs in Denver to speak for Texas Tech, serving on different committees. I'm not really much of a person on that. I'm married to somebody who really is good at committees. And then if you are a big company, you're a liaison between the organization and the parent company. The manager reports to different people about where we are, and then it gets filtered back. So you want to come back and say, hey, corporate's doing this or that. But those are the 3 things. And again, it just depends on your different organization. But primarily, you're going to spend most of your time as a leader or a representative. And then, again, depending on the size, Kirby here for us, Kirby Hocutt, he's really liaison like with the Board of Regents and dealing with the President's office. We don't have many of those roles, but we do serve a lot of times as a representative and doing some different things that we can do to take some of that off of him. So it just depends on your organization. So that is it for this. I know that was a lot to go over, and I tried to slow it down and go back on some of the slides if you needed if I thought you needed to see those again. But remember, again, I'm going to make this as easy as possible for you on the test to say, here are the slides that you need to go on. This test will cover these slides from these chapters. It'll be identified. And so if I ask you a question about roles, you can go back and look at it if you don't automatically know the answer yourself. So appreciate everyone submitting their videos or their written introduction of themselves. Looking forward to working with all of you this semester. I do think I didn't do this in the first summer session. I think they've asked me to do it this summer session. We can maybe do a Skype session with each of you sometime middle of the semester, just make sure everything is great. So I'll try to get that arranged also. But looking forward to this and looking forward to your interactions. Go to the message boards. I'll have a question for you on the message board, and we'll move on down the road. And hopefully, you all have a good rest of your day or night or morning, wherever you are.